Cage Nation TV is brought to you by Lion Country's rock station 105.9 Quick Rock. Streaming worldwide at 1059quickrock.com.
Let's go. Welcome to the Cage Nation. Welcome to the Cage Nation. Welcome to the Cage Nation. No one can drop us, no one can stop us. We are the warriors, no one can top us, no one can rock us. We are the warriors, no one can drop us, no one can stop us. We are the warriors, no one can top us, no one can rock us. We are the warriors.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Cage Nation TV. Drew Shannon, Albert Cameron, and as you'll notice, the scenery is a little bit different than it has been for the past, year plus?
Almost, it'll be 2 years in May.
We have done a couple of episodes from this studio, but now we are proud to announce that this is now the official home of Cage Nation TV at the 105.9 Quick Rock Studios in State College. And of course, we want to thank Michael and Diana Stapleford for allowing us the opportunity to broadcast from the Quick Rock Studios.
It's part of a great partnership, sponsorship package, and when you think about it, of all the media outlets that really believe in mixed martial arts and believe that it is product, it has been 105.9 Quick Rock. I mean,
exactly, it's a marriage made in heaven. We've got the MMA update Friday mornings with Ryan Gruen of Central PA Mixed Martial Arts. We have we've interviewed fighters here. We've talked to CD MMA. I think pretty much 1 through 8.
Yeah. I mean, this room has MMA legacy. It's a real honor to be broadcasting from here.
Okay. With that in mind, again, thanks to 105.9 Quick Rock, my other workplace, my main source of income.
Hour,
that's right. Albert works for us too. For those of you that don't know, Albert works in the Quick Rock offices as you're the traffic manager?
Business manager.
The business manager. It's a hoity-toity title.
We all got day jobs, but the good news is those day jobs have allowed us to bring great MMA coverage, which I am very, very extremely thankful for.
And Albert is also part-time here on the air as well. So whenever one of us, myself or Andy Robb, is away, and Albert can fill in, tune in, and he'll let you know on Facebook. All right, enough of that. Again, thanks to Quick Rock for Quick Rock. Streaming worldwide at 1059QWIKrock.com, 1059 Quick Rock. All right.
How many did you get in there?
1059 Quick Rocks?
I think you got like 8.
I got 8 1059 Quick Rocks in there, and now the 1059 Quick Rock count is up to 11. 11 now.
11?
Because I said 1059 Quick Rock. Now 12 times. I think we've whored out the sponsor enough. All right, Albert, we've got a lot to get to. The past week has been one of a bit of celebration for some, controversy for others. It depends on what side of the fence you're on with the topics we're about to discuss.
Well, yeah. I mean, it all started from when we were at Gladiators of the Cage's North Shore's Rise to Power 7. On the ride home, we got the news that Phil Brooks had signed to the UFC, and I mean, then social media being what it is, everyone let their opinions fly, and it just went, bah!
Now, for those of you that are not initiated as to who Phil Brooks is, and hang on just a second. So one thing about the 1059 Quick Rock Studios is that it's a cold winter day and the heat is turned up, and I just have to... There we go. For those of you that don't know, Phil Brooks is the real name of former WWE superstar CM Punk. And he's an individual that we have collectively said, since his contract, since he walked out of WWE for reasons that,
business or otherwise.
There's two sides to every story. You can hear Vince's side, you can hear Punk's side. All in all, there was a mutual disagreement and a mutual parting of the ways.
But when it comes down to is it CM Punk's side or Vince's side, Dana's side is going to be the one who ended up making out in that one. We're gonna talk about that and touch upon it.
All right.
But then we also got word the UFC might be getting sued by just about everybody who fights for them.
I did notice that argument, that article. I didn't get a chance to read it in full, so I'm not prepared. So I'm looking forward to hearing about this.
Great news, my friend. I'm going to educate you.
Fantastic.
All right.
Plus a whole lot more. Do we have the Cage Nation Underground coming up as well, right?
Now, we actually got a longer Cage Nation Underground than usual, but I thought it was really, really important. Gladiators of the Cage has put all of their fights on YouTube, and there was one that I was particularly impressed by, and that is Josh Fremd versus Jeremy Sakuta. And I believe this is the fight where Josh Fremd unleashes the Sparta kick.
All right.
Yeah, so that was Sparta. This is Gladiators. This is Cage Nation TV. Don't go nowhere.
105.9 Quick Rod. Welcome back to Cage Nation TV here in the 105.9 Quick Rock Studios. Drew Shannon, Albert Cameron.
And we're going to talk about CM Punk, Phil Brooks signing for the UFC. Now, here's, Drew, I'll tell you, this is why it's real interesting that you and I are talking about this. In our circle of friends, the people we know that are our realm of influence, you're known as a very, very knowledgeable professional wrestling guy.
And here's the thing about the professional wrestling and mixed martial arts. We call them second cousins, more or less.
Yep.
But if you're a fan, you either like this decision or you don't like this decision.
It's the Hatfields and the McCoys when it came down to it.
Or you're indifferent. You either like wrestling, you either like pro wrestling, or you don't like pro wrestling. And there are some that like both, and that's fine. Everyone has their opinion. But as far as the signing of CM Punk, which I still don't know what we call him. Do we call him Phil Brooks? Do we call him Phil CM Punk Brooks? Do we call him CM Punk?
Well,
for our
athletic commissions are going to require him to use his real name.
For our purposes, though, we'll refer to him as CM Punk because that's how everybody knows him as.
The athletic commissions are going to require him to compete under his real name. So when he gets called to the cage, he will be Phil Brooks. It is likely he'll be called. CM Punk will be his nickname.
Right.
More than likely. I mean, unless something drastic changes, but I mean, it would make a lot more sense for everybody involved to have him attached to that CM Punk name. Now, one of the questions is he going to be allowed to use CM Punk in any sort of manner? I mean, did the UFC copyright it? I can't imagine they did.
No, because Phil Brooks was CM Punk before he came into WWE.
Independent scene, Ring of Honor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's going to be, I believe he owns the name. He owns that name, CM Punk.
Yeah.
He's got his own. He's got his own merchandise page on one of the wrestling sites where it is official CM Punk merchandise. CM Punk owns his name, so
Which is incredibly smart business decision.
Exactly.
But the athletic commissions he's going to compete for are going to require him to use his real name, unless there has been one exception that I know of, two maybe. Kimbo Slice.
Okay.
His name is not Kimbo Slice. It's Kevin Ferguson. But every time he's been called onto the cage, it's been by Kimbo Slice. I don't know how we got that through. The other one being Tank Abbott. His name is David Tank. His name is David Abbott, but he got called on by Tank. At this point, though, I imagine he's going to be Phil Brooks.
I'm sure there are exceptions to every rule.
Yeah.
Now, let's get into the controversy here.
Okay.
There are people who think this is... They think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
CM Punk coming to the UFC. CM Punk with a background in Kempo, with a background in, I believe, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
And Muay Thai.
And Muay Thai. He's got those backgrounds. He's trained under the Gracies, if I'm not mistaken.
Henner, I think. Henner Gracie, yeah.
This is going to be great for UFC. You know, he's going to get into the cage and he's going to prove himself. This is something he's always wanted to do. Now you've got the other side of the page, where MMA fans are outraged.
Oh, a lot of us were losing our minds.
I'm kind of I'm on the fence. You've got those individuals that are on the fence and see both the glass half empty and half full.
I can make arguments for both. I mean, I'll reserve my personal judgment, but we can certainly make arguments for both.
Well, let's talk about that then.
Okay.
The argument for CM Punk coming into UFC, it's going to draw CM Punk has brand name recognition.
That's exactly what's great about it.
CM Punk is going to draw viewers, not only fans of him that do watch MMA are going to tune into the fight, but those that are fans of his career from WWE, from Ring of Honor, that have followed him, their interest is going to be piqued as well. They're going to plunk down the $9.99 for the UFC Fight Pass. Maybe they'll get the pay-per-view. Maybe they'll go to a local bar and watch it. But whatever the case may be, there is the opportunity for money to be made in UFC, and that, my friends, is what business is all about.
To put this in perspective, Drew, CM Punk signing with the UFC now is equivalent of Hulk Hogan being involved in UFC 1. That's how big of a deal it is, because he was on top of his game, still regarded by professional wrestling fans as the best in the world. He has legit martial arts experience. He doesn't have the mixed martial arts experience, but we'll get into that later. So
we are talking about CM Punk and not Hulk Hogan, right?
We are talking about CM Punk and
you threw me there for a second. I'm like, Hulk Hogan, martial arts experience?
No, I'm trying to compare like the two.
Okay.
As far as star power goes, CM Punk signing with the UFC now is the equivalent of back in 1993 at UFC 1 with Horace Gracie, Ken Shamrock, Pat Smith, Art Jimerson. If Hulk Hogan had been there, this would be the equivalent of,
I think it would be
the transition.
More or less in 1994 when Hulk Hogan signed with WCW.
If it had been the UFC instead of WCW, it would have had an equally great impact.
Right. Okay. Now, so we're in agreement that from a business standpoint,
CM Punk might as well have written a check for $1 million, and over his career and the star power he's going to be able to draw, he'd be able to cash it.
There's money to be made here. All right. Now, here's the arguments against it. And this is, and I agree with some of these statements too. CM Punk, yes, he has a background in Kempo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai. He's trained with the Gracie camp, with Team Gracie. That being said, he doesn't have an amateur background.
At all.
To my knowledge,
Period.
and you would know, he has no amateur background whatsoever. He has no experience fighting in mixed martial arts aside from training in these three disciplines. There are guys that have clawed and scratched their way through the amateur ranks to get to a professional level and then eventually try to work for that brass ring to reach up and grab the brass ring in UFC. CM Punk comes along, boom, he gets an automatic pass, and now he's going to be fighting within 6 months. That, I think, is, for lack of a better term, I think it's bullshit. The fact that he's getting a free pass and he has no experience whatsoever. I mean, I like CM Punk. I'm looking forward to seeing him in UFC, but the fact of the matter is he has not paid his dues in mixed martial arts.
Why should CM Punk get a shot at the UFC before a Mike Wilkins or a Dominic Mazzata or a Mark Jericho or a Kamal Worthy?
And again,
it's all come down to star power, but
it comes down to name recognition and star power.
Okay, I agree with that. I'm going to tell you something that's probably gonna blow your mind a little bit. The MMA community would actually have an easier time if Santino Marella had been signed to the UFC as opposed to CM Punk, because he has the amateur mixed martial arts background.
Okay.
He's actually done the work in the cage. He's done the pad work. He's earned his credentials. Name recognition is one thing; it's fine, but we're trying to keep it to legit competition.
Right.
And legitimately, who has CM Punk beaten to get a shot in the UFC? The answer is nobody.
Nobody at all.
Nobody at all. When Brock Lesnar went to the UFC, his first fight in mixed martial arts was not in the UFC. It was actually a fight in Japan for K1 Heroes. And, I mean, he won. I mean, he won.
Right.
Brock Lesnar, we know, is a brutal, just blunt force trauma kind of fighter, but he won. And then he went to the UFC. And then they tried to wait him out. They gave, I think his first fight was Frank Mir. But I mean, at the end of the day, when he won the UFC heavyweight title, he beat Randy Couture. Like, he beat one of the Godfathers, one of the legends. He did it in fantastic fashion. It was a definitive stoppage. I got nothing to go on by with CM Punk fighting anybody.
Now you brought up a good point, though. We were talking off camera.
Yeah.
If UFC still had the quote unquote farm leagues,
Yeah.
Where an individual could get experience, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
No.
We'd be cool with it. It'd be like, all right, Punk's in. He's gonna cut his teeth in what one of the.
The ideal farm league for CM Punk would have been WEC.
Okay.
And the reason for that is he still would have had a camera on him. He would still be able to draw TV views and pay-per-view buys, whatever the case may be. but he wouldn't be on the main stage blocking anyone else from getting their shot. And that, I think, would be a lot easier for people. If CM Punk were going to get an MMA, and don't get me wrong, I know why the UFC signed him. I mean, it all comes down to the cash.
Exactly.
And money talks.
Right.
So I understand that. But if it had happened a little more organically, where CM Punk maybe have gotten a fight in King of the Cage, maybe even Bellator, because, I mean, I think it'd be a little easier to swallow that, oh, hey, professional wrestler fighting for Bellator, we've seen that before.
Right.
And I'm talking about Bobby Lashley. I think...
Yeah.
And I think it would be that would be the way to go about it. Now, the last UFC fight, there was actually sponsorship stickers on the UFC Octagon for the WWE 2K15 game.
And I know there were a couple of guys that we know that were a little jacked by that. They
Absolutely.
saw the WWE logo in a UFC ring and are now thinking that UFC has sold out and that there will be a partnership between UFC and WWE. There's a partnership probably between UFC and the makers of the video game. Is it 2K Sports?
Might be.
I think it's 2K Sports or something like that. It used to be THQ that made those.
What the UFC? Well, that therein becomes an issue because UFC video games are made by EA Sports.
That is true.
So I mean, why would they jeopardize their sponsorship, their deal with EA Sports for a 2K15 game unless there's some sort of subsidiary parent company thing going on? Well, I don't know.
I don't know either, but I do not foresee. And everybody's like, well, it's kind of coincidental that.
Look at it now.
CM Punk and the UFC, now WWE logos, you think that something's going on. I will categorically state that after listening to the interview with CM Punk and Colt Cabana on Colt Cabana's podcast, which, by the way, you can find on YouTube, and if you have not heard this interview, you might want to check it out if you're a fan of Punk, if you're a fan of WWE, which some of you are. There's no way that CM Punk is affiliated with WWE at this time, if at all anymore. Now, granted, individuals have said that, they're like, I'll never go back, and then they wind up making amends, mending bridges,
Ken Shamrock.
fences. Ken Shamrock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret the Hitman Hart, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't really think that there's any relationship whatsoever between CM Punk and the WWE anymore. That's pretty much been dissolved. So to say that, and here's another edge of the coin. Everybody's like, well, the WWE wrestler is coming into MMA. The former WWE wrestler, he has no ties with WWE anymore. There's no partnership between WWE and UFC. That's not going to happen.
Well, Vince McMahon was saying that the UFC's dangerous. Someone's going to break their neck and someone's going to get killed.
Exactly, and you can listen to that in the podcast as well.
And more people have died in professional wrestling than have in mixed martial arts. Period.
Now, yeah, there was a point that I was going to make, and I can't remember what it was now. But the long and the short of it is, CM Punk for UFC, it's beneficial. No matter how controversial it is, it's beneficial for the UFC because you're going to draw in the buy rates, you're going to draw in the pay-per-view money, you're going to draw in new fans that are hopefully going to take a shine to the product and enjoy watching this. And these are going to be, hopefully lifelong fans. So they're going to boost the product. They're going to boost the revenue coming in. I know the point I was going to make with UFC and WWE.
Yeah.
Hopefully UFC, obviously they have to be watching the competition. And they see what Bellator is doing in regards to Bellator and TNA, which I don't even know if that's even a thing anymore.
TNA is like this close, is like losing their TV deal on Spike. They're going to some no-name channel.
TNA is going to be on Destination America, and if you know what channel Destination America is on, please let us know because we have no effing clue whatsoever.
Bellator underwent a lot of changes with Scott Coker taking over, so I mean, Dana White has to know that Bjorn Rebney made a terrible call by ever allowing that kind of cross-promotion to occur. And
I think Dana White, albeit a smart businessman, and if he was to do a deal with WWE, I'm sure they would do it the right way. They wouldn't do it the way Bellator did, but I don't see Dana White making a deal with Vince McMahon.
No.
It's just not better. I mean, they're two separate entities, and they are successful on their own merits. They don't need to combine into one universal force. I don't think that's going to happen.
The number one reason why MMA fans are getting so burned by this comes down to two reasons. One, he's blocking people from getting their shots. He's not having fight number one, and there are a lot of guys who deserve it. I mean, even like in our local Pittsburgh area, I think that a Dominic Mazzata or a Conor Worthy, Mark Jericho, has a shot at the UFC before someone who has not fought a single fight would. We all, as MMA fans, we firmly believe that. We're also fiercely trying to protect the legitimacy of the sport.
Now, that being said, there are some that have said, well, CM Punk going to UFC, that ruins that tarnishes the legitimacy of MMA. And in my opinion, no, it doesn't. What Bellator does with TNA, that tarnishes the legitimacy of MMA. When you have Tito Ortiz and Rampage Jackson fighting on TNA Impact on Spike TV.
And Rampage gets hit with like a sledgehammer or something.
And they go all ECW with tables, ladders, chairs, oh my, kendo sticks and everything like that. And then a week later, these two guys, or maybe even that weekend, these two guys are in the cage, fighting like nothing ever happened. That takes the legitimacy away from MMA.
A lot of the legitimacy questions coming into the fact is that someone who, and this is a perhaps potentially ignorant point of view, is that someone who does predetermined sports entertainment, does that compare to actually legitimate martial arts? There's a lot of legitimacy issues there as well, like, professional wrestling, we know it's scripted. But we know that professional wrestling as a sport is a very, very taxing on the body and, very, very hard thing to go through.
Right.
Professional wrestling and mixed martial arts do have that common denominator, and that is catch wrestling. Josh Barnett, I think, is probably one of the most... He has done the best in transitioning between mixed martial arts. Because former UFC heavyweight champion, very, very active in Pride, but has also done a lot of wrestling in Japan, and it's his style of catch wrestling. Frank Trigg described catch wrestling as professional wrestling, but real. So, the techniques like the bulldog, there's an actual choke that will, happen from a bulldog. The front chancery, which would be the, you know it as a front headlock, we know it as a guillotine choke.
Right.
There's a lot of gray area there. One of my concerns for legitimacy too is the young impressionable fans, because we know over the last couple of years the WWE has tried to move into like the PG-13 era, trying to make it more child friendly. My question is a young fan going to watch the UFC because he was such a big fan of CM Punk and be confused about what he's seeing? Because there's no, there wouldn't be any opportunities for CM Punk to hit the go to sleep. There is no climbing the turnbuckle to do like a fantastic finishing move. There's a young fan factor.
Right.
And I know there's a lot of young fans who go to mixed martial arts fights because they train in martial arts. How many times you can go to see the MMA or the Gladiators of the Cage and you see a young gentleman or a young woman who is there because she trains in Tang Soo Do or trains in Jiu-Jitsu. There's that area of, I don't want to say suspend disbelief, but understanding what you're seeing. And there might be there are adult professional wrestling fans who don't understand the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all seen them. I'm not saying that those people...
6 words, it's still real to me, damn it. That's all I gotta say.
I'm not saying that guy represents the professional wrestling fan community whatsoever.
Right,
but
yeah.
There is that minority of people who still feel that way.
Mm. So. Over the years, it's been, we all know that it's sports entertainment.
Predetermined, not scripted, predetermined.
Right.
There's a goal and they're going after it, whereas the UFC is a different sports product entirely.
Exactly. And again, I think though that the fans are, I'm going to give them a little more credit. I think they're smarter than that. I think a young fan who watches CM Punk in the UFC, I think they know that these are two different animals. These are two different products we're talking about, just because of word of mouth, social media, and media in general has kind of educated the younger fans and stuff like that to know that okay, WWE is the predetermined sports entertainment and UFC is mixed martial arts, where it is. I don't want to say real because I don't want to use that word.
Full contact.
It's full contact. Thank you. To me, I think a young fan there may be some confusion in the beginning, but I think they'll get it. I think they'll understand what's going on. And once they see the product, they're going to be like, wow, this is incredible. I don't think that they're going to steer away from WWE either. I think that fan will now be a fan of both of these products. And I hope so.
Well, that was the gamble that Bellator and Impact was making, and I don't know how that worked out for him. But
I know how that worked out for him. Destination America, okay?
But Phil Brooks wouldn't be the first UFC fighter who's had a UFC fight and has not had a amateur MMA record. James Toney, the boxer, he fought in the UFC. Now Dana White fed him to Randy Couture,
right?
Because James Toney was outside of a UFC event just talking smack to all the fighters, and Dana White's like, "Fine, we'll sign you. You will fight." He was defeated, and we've never heard from him again in mixed martial arts. Now Ken Shamrock tried to get into a couple programs with him, but it didn't happen.
Okay, now. And I know we're dealing with a lot of the issue with Punk right here, and we do have other things that we want to concentrate on. But now that Punk has entered the UFC ranks, he's had quite a few challengers. One in what that comes to prominence is the Green Ranger from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
This is going to sound really, really bad.
Right.
But the MMA community would actually have an easier time with the Green Ranger getting a UFC deal than CM Punk.
Somebody explain that one to me.
Because he's done the work.
He's done the work.
He's done the work. And it comes down to, he's done the work. He wouldn't be blocking anyone's shot.
Right.
But I've been trying to get a hold of the Green Ranger. So if you're a representative of Jason, Dave, and Frank, you know how to get a hold of me. I'm trying to get in contact with you. But he Kyoshin karate, he's highly decorated karate fighter, karateka. And he's also done extensive training and groundwork. I mean, he's won fights. He's had 4 amateur fights, I believe, and 1 pro fight. He's won them all. Yeah. So those are the kind of things. We would be easier with a Mighty Morphin Power Ranger being in the octagon than we would with a professional wrestler at this point because they've done the work.
Right. Now, that being said, we were talking at one point about opponents that could face Punk. Now, Punk is not immediately going to be, and you should all know this by now, and if you don't, Punk is not immediately going to be going into UFC. He's not going to be fighting at 182.
We don't know that. He's flip-flopping between welterweight and middleweight depending on his body type.
I mean UFC 182, the weight class. I know he's flip-flopping. He's trying to figure out what weight class he's in. He's kind of indecisive, but he won't be wrestling. He won't be fighting at UFC 182. I say about 6 months. They're saying that he'll make his debut. 6
months is an awful short time to get UFC ready.
Right,
but they're trying to get him in the cage to cash in on his name while the iron is still hot. They're trying to strike while the iron is still hot. Now, I want to put a thought in everyone's head. If CM Punk fights at welterweight, they're going to want to find someone who has a similar.
And this is what I was getting at.
Not welterweight, but middleweight.
Right.
If he fights at middleweight, and they're going to try to find someone who's has a similar record, has only a UFC fight or 2, how likely is it that Phil Brooks will be welcomed to the octagon by CageNationTV.com, everyone. Make sure you visit.
I wondered what you were doing.
How likely is it that CM Punk would be welcomed to the octagon by Chris Dempsey from Gladiators of the Cage?
I would love to see that. And we would love to talk to Chris Dempsey about that.
Oh, you best believe.
And if that ever does happen, you best believe it. Hopefully you're going to talk to Dempsey.
And I think there's no way I'm speaking for the UFC when saying that CM Punk might be fighting Chris Dempsey. I'm saying all the factors involved, Chris Dempsey could be an opponent for CM Punk.
Right. It's anything's possible.
But I mean that would be kind of like a vindication for MMA fans. If Chris Dempsey were to defeat a CM Punk, it would be we told you
exactly.
This is welcome to the octagon. But if he beats Chris Dempsey, we know that he would have beaten someone who was very, very tough, and maybe he earned a shot.
And maybe Punk would add to his own legitimacy in.
He'd have to. I mean, Phil Brooks is in a really, really tough way right now. I mean, he's rock and hard place. Here's Phil Brooks.
He's got to prove himself.
He does. I mean, if he comes out to the octagon and he wins, all the haters are gonna stop hating. Right. The fountain of haterade is gonna run dry. But if he loses, then I think we're gonna accept him a lot more because then he's gonna know what legitimate UFC competition's like.
And I want to state for the record that we're not jumping on the hater bandwagon.
No, not whatsoever.
When it comes to and I know my comments earlier saying that it was bullshit that Punk gets into the UFC before some of these other guys. But I'm speaking for the fans as well.
Exactly.
I like the fact that Punk is coming in. Someone from my world of professional wrestling is going to enter the world of mixed martial arts. And there's always room for new talent. That's how the product progresses. It's called business. That's how you keep your business going. Keep it fresh. Keep it entertaining. Do I feel, though, that he should have gotten the shot before someone who's been busting their ass in Gladiators of the Cage, in Pinnacle, in WCC, and any of these guys that have been, in the regional promotions, no matter where they're at, whether they're in Pennsylvania, Ohio, or wherever they are across the country. Do I feel that CM Punk should have gotten a shot before them? No, he shouldn't have. But he did, and now we're dealing with it now.
If CM Punk would have beat Kimbo Slice in a street fight before coming to the UFC, he'd have an easier time. There was actually a UFC fighter. His name was Sean the Canny Gannon, who fought Kimbo Slice in one of those crazy underground fight videos. Kimbo Slice is a background fighter. Sean Gannon actually fought him and won. And Sean Gannon got a shot in the UFC. And we were fine with it. We're like, okay, yeah,
right,
come on board. So, if CM Punk had started MMA, went to professional wrestling, come back to the UFC, we'd have no problem with it. But, in the sake of fairness, there are 3 names I want to remind you of. Ken Shamrock started with professional wrestling first. He actually started with a promotion in Georgia, went to Japan to professional wrestle. They actually started shoot fighting in Japan, and then that's how Ken Shamrock got to be the UFC legend he is today. Dan Severn toes that line daily between being a wrestler, a fighter, and a professional wrestler all the time, and we don't say a word.
Right.
Brock Lesnar was a legitimate UFC champion. He got kicked in the gut so hard his insides exploded.
Yeah.
But he beat Randy Couture for the UFC title. So from the MMA to the MMA community, we certainly understand where you're coming from, and I'm reserving my personal judgments and my feelings about it, and I'm trying to report as unbiased as possible.
Whereas I'm just going to straight out tell you what I think. That might not be the best thing, especially if we try to land CM Punk for an interview. But
I mean, if anyone has a shot of transitioning from the top of one sport to another, I'm certain that Phil Brooks has the tools, because Henry Gracie does not waste his time with just anybody.
But I think my only problem with the whole deal is, again, that he's getting, just because he is who he is because of his name,
right?
He's getting this shot at UFC ahead of other guys who have trained and all that. Other than that, I'm excited for it. I'm looking forward to seeing him in his first fight, and I'm looking forward to seeing his progress and see how this goes. One final question, though. If things don't work out in UFC, where does he go? Does he go back to WWE? Is he going to be able to mend those bridges? Now, the podcast that Stone Cold Steve Austin does. Recently, Stone Cold had Vince McMahon on. They did discuss the Punk situation, and Vince did say that he hoped that if the time came and if it did happen, that they would like to be partners again, that they would like to be friends again and work with each other again. If that were to happen, that he would hope that if Punk wanted to come back, that he'd be more or less welcome back with open arms, no matter what he said, because there's a lot of guys that have gone and said things that they may have later on regretted. Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret the Hitman Hart, the list goes on and on of wrestlers that have done that, and then they've always come back. So, does CM Punk, given his outspoken attitude, does he come back to WWE if the UFC doesn't work out?
If not, there was always Japan. Because Japan loves that strong style kind of professional wrestling. Mixed martial arts is still huge over there. He'd be able to transition seamlessly and without any problem. So if the WWE doesn't work out for him, if the UFC doesn't work out for him, I think Japan would be a viable option. I think he'd make a decent living over there.
All right. That is all we got to say about CM Punk. Phil Brooks. That was a lengthy one, but it's one that we're both kind of passionate about, just because of we both have our backgrounds in professional wrestling, and it's kind of exciting to see a fresh face that we've known for. I wouldn't say a fresh face in MMA, coming from a background that we've watched for years, as someone that we've seen come up through the ranks in the years in professional wrestling.
And it's important for us to make sure that your opinions that you guys have had out there are heard on a discussion platform. So there you go. Hopefully we represented you guys well. Coming up after the break, where the UFC might be getting sued, and we're going to talk to you about why. I'm actually going to put my business degree to work on this one. So it's paying off slowly but slowly. Don't go nowhere. We are still here at the Quick Rock Studio, streaming online right now at 105.9 QWYK Rock.
Well, we're not streaming online.
No, the radio station.
The radio station, 105.9 Quick Rock. Let's clear that up. 105.9 Quick Rock is streaming worldwide at 1059QWYKRock.com, and they are a proud sponsor of Cage Nation TV.
So, that being said, we're going to go to a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Uncle Dana perhaps having to dig in his wallet in a very big way.
You're watching Cage Nation TV. Stick around. More next.
Don't worry about remote signal blockage again. Introducing the Top Mount. This low-profile shelf is perfect for placing your cable box where you can use it. The easy-to-install lightweight shelf is designed to fit behind almost any flat screen TV, with or without a wall mount. The Top Mount is perfect for easy access to cable boxes, game consoles, and DVD players. Don't have your signal blocked again. Order your Top Mount today at thetopmount.com. Welcome back to Cage Nation TV, or what we'll probably dub as the CM Punk Hour. I don't know. We spent quite a lot of time on CM Punk. Now we're going to move to another story coming out this week, also involving the UFC, and that being there appears to be a class action lawsuit against the UFC.
One has not been filed yet, but it's very, very close to being so. In this report, we're getting this information from BloodyElbow.com. We've not originally reported this anyway, but BloodyElbow.com has had the story out there that apparently a lot of guys are getting fed up. That there's a lot of things in play that the UFC is doing, and from what I've read.
When you say a lot of guys, who in particular?
No one who will identify themselves, but I'm told like fighters and managers are getting together and they're going to sue. Apparently, Nate Diaz might be one of them because he has no love lost on things he said about the UFC. He's been back for one fight and he's already talking. But that's Nate Diaz. That's why we love him. Mm-hmm. Class action lawsuit under the allegation of antitrust.
Okay. Monopolies.
And I know you and I have talked in depth about how I do not feel that the UFC is a monopoly. A monopoly is prevention of free competition. So we've got Drew Shannon Fighting Championship, and we've got the Albert Cameron Fighting Alliance. A monopoly and antitrust would be you buying up cage manufacturers, going to TV producers and being like, hey, don't work with this schmuck, and just doing things that would prevent me from competing with you. Okay. My argument has always been how is the UFC being the largest mixed martial arts promoter preventing anyone from promoting, because we've been to independent fights. The UFC has done nothing to prevent Gladiators of the Cage from promoting, from Pinnacle Fighting Championships, from Complete Devastation, from King of the Cage. They're just really, really good at what they do.
To my understanding, a monopoly would also be, you've got a major corporation.
Yep. You
have these other smaller corporations that are surrounding you. And you, as the larger corporation with your big money and your influence, you're like, okay, you guys are doing the same thing we're doing. Why don't I just buy you, and you, and then come under our umbrella, and then eventually, you have more than one company under the same brand name, and. Am I wrong?
You mean how the UFC bought the WFA, the WEC, Strikeforce, Affliction, kind of like that?
Kind of like that.
Yeah. Over the past couple weeks, my tune on the UFC being a monopoly has changed a little bit, and I'll tell you why. The deal with Reebok really bothers me.
Okay.
The deal with Reebok says that there's fighter uniforms. This is what they'll be allowed to wear. They are Reebok branded, and the higher you are on the card and the more money you bring in, the more of the Reebok, the bigger slice of pie you get from Reebok. Well, that'd do a lot of good for guys like who are just coming into the UFC, who rely on local sponsorship dollars,
right,
to help train. I mean, if you're on the UFC Facebook prelims, how much of a sponsorship payment could you be getting from Reebok?
I wouldn't think much.
Okay, well, the Reebok uniforms may very well prevent you from putting your local sponsors on there. So how are you getting paid to train for your fights?
You're not.
Therein lies the problem. And this is what's changing my tune about the UFC monopoly. There are supplemental means of income that fighters rely on to get them through training camps, to help bring in training partners, to make them better fighters.
Right.
To make them better competitors on the main stage. And if you take those sponsors away, you're going to you're going to make the gap much larger between a John Jones and a light heavyweight who just fought in Philadelphia somewhere.
Okay.
Like, that gap is getting larger and larger, and it's going to become harder and harder to fill because they are not getting their sponsorship dollars they need to sharpen themselves to be world-class competition. So if smaller promoters are not able to get their guys on the big card, well, what hope do they have? If they're not able to do that, then those smaller promotions are never really going to grow.
Right.
I mean, because Gladiators of the Cage right now, they get to pat themselves on the back saying, hey, you know what? We got a guy in the UFC. Pinnacle Fighting Championships is able to pat them back and say, hey, we got Cody Garbrandt on the UFC. Mm-hmm. And that raises their stock a lot. My fear is, if they're not able to close that gap between the headliners of the UFC and fighting on great regional promotions, one, the UFC talent pool is going to stale. It's going to become stagnant.
Right.
And eventually they may have to do something to change that. But then that's where you're going to see local promotions. They're going to end up fighting it. They're going to end up becoming the deal, because if UFC becomes stale, people will go elsewhere. So UFC is kind of hurting themselves in a way about this with this Reebok deal. But I mean, essentially they're creating business practices that are preventing free competition and, I don't want to say free market trade, but
that's what I thought you were going to go for.
They're preventing the free exchange of supplemental income, and that's a problem for a lot of guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where do we go from there?
Well, I mean, Uncle Dana knows more about promoting MMA than I do.
Right.
He's very good at it. Fortunately for fight fans who pay for the UFC Fight Pass and who go to the UFC pay-per-views, I mean, it's great for them that Uncle Dana knows what he's doing.
Right.
I just think that this might be the one thing, the Reebok deal might be the one thing that fighters are going to get up in arms about and may actually walk. I've seen fighters sit on contracts. When the UFC bought Pride, there were a good amount of Pride fighters who refused to fight for the UFC, and they sat on their contracts and didn't fight for 3 years. I see a lot of guys doing that. If it's going to be really, really hard to prove monopoly in a court like that, it's going to be very hard to prove that the UFC is doing anything. But I think this Reebok deal is very, very damning evidence. If the UFC is found guilty of antitrust, they're probably going to have to pay fines, penalties, this, that, and the other. I can't imagine they're going to break up any part of UFC holdings, because the UFC is primarily a mixed martial arts promoter. That's what their company does. They're not a media outlet too. They're not a TV network. They're not a cage manufacturer. They'll probably have to pay a bunch of fines and penalties. I do imagine that fighters will fight elsewhere just so they don't have to fight for the UFC. So, I mean, it could be very, very bad, but it also could be very good for the smaller guys.
Well, it's something we're going to be keeping our eye on most definitely here
Absolutely.
in the Cage Nation, and we'll see how this comes about. Now, they're facing a class action lawsuit.
It has not been filed.
It has not been filed as of yet. We do want to make that. We do want to stress that. So.
I mean, right now it's speculation. I mean, it could be a negotiating posture. It could be a bunch of guys being like, "Hey, you know what? If I don't get this deal, I'm going to sue."
Right.
The Reebok deal is in place. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And local sponsors are the ones who are ending up suffering from that one. So as we get more information available, we share it with you guys. Not as winded as what the CM Punk discussion was, but hey, great information getting out there.
I was expected to be a little more winded about that, but.
Well, I mean, it's only so much. I mean, until it's legitimate, it's been signed, the UFC is being sued, it's only speculation at this point.
All right. Coming up right now, then, let's get into the Cage Nation Underground. This portion of our fine broadcast here in the 1059 Quick Rock Studios, online at 1059QWIKRock.com.
Josh Fremd versus Jeremy Sakuta from Gladiators of the Cage. I believe it was one of their North Shores Rise to Power events. Josh Fremd impressed a lot of people when he got in the cage that night. He used his kicks to keep Sakuta at bay, and it just ended up becoming a great fight. It's a little bit longer, but it's certainly worth the watch.
Not as long as the CM Punk discussion, but pretty damn near close.
All right, so we got Josh Fremd versus Jeremy Sakuta on the Cage Nation Underground. Don't go nowhere. incredible TKO victory from Josh Fremd over Jeremy Sakuta, and that's that Sparta kick, that front kick planted right to the middle of the chest.
God, that was unbelievable.
This is Sparta.
That had us up out of our seats.
Absolutely. Speaking of Jeremy Sakuta, he fought David Chim at the Gladiators of the Cage's North Shores Rise to Power 7, and I am still convinced he got the raw deal.
Yeah.
One judge scored it 30-27 in Sakuta's favor, and the other two apparently were watching another fight because, you know,
the other two apparently had UFC Fight Pass on their phones.
It gives me hope that someday I can get punched in the face and still want to fight. So, I mean, but you know, the judges make the decisions. I don't get paid to do it, so moving on.
Someday you will.
Someday.
Not today, but someday.
Someday.
All right. Is that going to do it then?
I think we've gone long enough.
I think we've gone long enough.
I think we have. Please.
Do you want me to wrap it up?
I want you to wrap it up.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Cage Nation TV from our new home in the 105.9 Quick Rock Studios. Again, want to thank Michael and Diana Stapleford and the entire staff at 105.9 Quick Rock and Magnum Broadcasting for allowing us to use the studios for our program. And this is the new home of Cage Nation TV.
Yeah. That dirty sheet in my basement is no longer a set.
Thank God, because the smell off of that, damn.
Well, you know.
Although I am going to miss the trips to the fridge to get waters and sodas and stuff like that, but we're just going to have to bring some in here.
Yeah. And my cat harassing the shit out of you.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and if you subscribe to YouTube, all the hard work is being done for you.
Boom!
YouTube brings the videos right to you, like, hey, Cage Nation TV has got something new. You watch it when you feel like it. You don't even have to wear pants. Just don't tell me about it if you're not. For Drew Shannon, I'm your elected official, Albert Cameron. This has been Cage Nation TV. We'll see you guys next week on Cage Nation TV.
Let's go.